Hi guys! Some of you have asked me how I water my plants, so in today's video I wanted to share with you how I do that. First, I'm doing the weight test and the pot feels light, so it means that the soil is dry, and if I want to make sure, I would use a stick or my finger and put it a couple inches below the soil. If it comes out fairly clean like this, then that means the soil is dry and this plant needs watering. Some plants want to completely dry out, and some plants you just need to water before that, so it just really depends on the water requirements of your plants. I would normally be carrying a watering can and pour water on top of the plants and wait for the water to drain out of the hole. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted to bring it over here so I can show you how much water I put in my plants. So I just want to make sure that I water all over the pot. I wait for the water to drain out of the holes. So most of my plants sits in a nursery pot like this with drainage holes, and it sits inside a cover pot. So once that's completely out, then I would put it back in the cover pot. And if I'm just watering in place, then I just wait for the water to drain out of the cover pot and I dump it out if it accumulates water. I think this one's done, and let's move on. For the trio star, this plant wants to be moist, so I don't really wait for it to be completely dry. And just like most of my plants, I water from the top and wait for the water to drain out of the nursery pot. For sensitive plants like this, I actually let water to seed out 24 hours. So I just put it in my watering can and just let all the harmful minerals that's in tap water to kind of dissipate. And some people, they like to use distilled water or bottled water, but for me, it works out just fine with just water that's been sitting out. The other method that I use for some of my plants is bottom watering. I use it for most of my string of pearls, string of turtles, a string of hearts. So for this one, I would use a plant tray or any container. I would pour a little bit of water in it and put the plant that I wanted to water on top. I just need to make sure that the soil actually touches the water, and I let it sit there for about 10 minutes and just let the water get absorbed by the soil. Just to show to you again, this is my peace lily, and for this plant I really notice a big difference in terms of top watering versus bottom watering. Like this plant loves bottom watering. So before, it would dry out fairly fast and the leaves, especially the baby ones, would be yellowing. But since I started bottom watering, this plant is doing well. And the other thing I wanted to note is that bottom watering doesn't take away the salt buildup and mineral buildup. So every now and then you would want to do top watering for this plant. So while we wait for that to get absorbed, we're now outside, and I wanted to show you how I water my succulents. So for succulents, I water completely just like any other plant. I know these plants like to be dry, but when you water it, you would want to water it completely. These terracotta pots have holes, so I don't worry about overwatering, and they wick out moisture, so the plant doesn't really stay too wet. I also try to avoid watering the leaves because I notice that when I do that, and if it's sunny outside, then my succulents just get completely burnt and eventually die, and you don't want to do that. So let's go back inside and check how much water got absorbed. This one feels completely moist, so I think this plant is done, and I will just put it back in the cover pot. The string of pearls feels still light, so it might need a little bit more time, so I would just put it back. The top doesn't feel too wet. The side feels a little bit dry, so I would just let it sit for another 10 minutes and it's gonna be done.